And so my...
So, here we are. We should be streaming by now. I hope we are. Okay, so welcome to Marsh and Anthony for this next, I guess, testing how to work streaming, as part of a hobby project to see whether we can stream regularly and see if we can get the ever elusive followers on our stream, which is ever
And
important.
hence,
Well,
first you get the streamers, then you get the money, then you get the women.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, in America.
Yeah, you need the streamers, and then the money, and then the bitches start flying
What do you got?
off the shelf.
What do you got? A 7-Eleven Big Gulp or something? Where's that from?
Yeah, but it's water. 7-Eleven.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, the Big Gulp, but it's water. Okay.
Hey, but maybe, who knows? Maybe we can get 7-Eleven. That's one of our sponsors.
Yeah, well, like
because I'm go to 7-Eleven, get yourself a. It's hot, it's summer, whenever you are, but we're in, and it's 90 degrees. Get yourself a Big Gulp. 7-Eleven, $9.99, 29 cents with the refill. Adam.
Okay. I'm just trying to work out what's wrong with your sound because it is. I'm not sure what it's doing. Doesn't matter.
Does my screen look grainy?
Yeah, it does a bit. I think mine looks all right, but it looks a bit fuzzy. But that looks better.
That better. That looks better.
Yeah, that's a bit better. Okay, so the first thing, I want to read an article from the Catholic Herald, which I found interesting, and it relates to the previous pontiff, Francis. So I'll just try and find the article. There we go. So this is on the Catholic Herald. Vatican leak reignites Latin Mass debate. Documents have emerged in what appears a leak at the Vatican, which indicate that the majority of Catholic bishops did not support the move by Pope Francis to restrict the Latin Mass. The texts from the Vatican's Doctrine Office were posted online on Tuesday by the Vatican correspondent Diane Montagna, who has followed the Latin Mass dispute since Traditionis Custos, the apostolic letter issued motu proprio by Pope Francis in 2021 that restricted the celebration of the Tridentine Mass of the Roman Rite. It reversed Pope Benedict XVI's previous permission for the Latin Mass to be celebrated. So you might remember this in 2021. The Pope came out and basically suppressed the Latin Mass in a lot of different quarters of the church. He didn't completely ban it, but he suppressed it in all sorts of areas. And it was a fairly controversial move. But let's read on. The Associated Press reports that the Vatican spokesman and prefect of the Doctrine Office hadn't responded when asked on Wednesday the 2nd of July to confirm the document's authenticity or to make any comments about the development. The Newswire reports that the documents show that the majority of Catholic bishops who responded in 2022's Vatican survey about the Latin Mass expressed general satisfaction with it, and they also warned that restricting it would do more harm than good. The documents, if authentic, could add pressure to Leo the 14th to take action on Traditionis Custos. Pope Leo, since the start of his pontificate, has spoken about the need for unity and reconciliation in the Church, while many conservatives and traditionalists have pointed to the Latin Mass dispute as an area that requires urgent resolution, notes the AP. Okay, so that's enough of the story, probably. So what we've got is the problem that Francis said that he wrote to the majority of the bishops, and they agreed with him that the church should suppress the Latin Mass. Well, this sort of folio of documents indicates that was nonsense, that actually the bishops came back and the majority of them said, no, leave it be, actually, and quite the opposite. If you ban it, it'll do more harm than good. So, I mean, this would have the Latin Mass Brigade hopping mad, I would imagine, because the basis upon which the decision was taken to suppress the Latin Mass was a lie. It seems that Pope Francis lied. What do you think of that?
Well, I don't know too much about the documents. All I can give is my personal opinion. I'm not a, I don't feel an affinity for the Latin Mass. I've been to a few of them in my life. They didn't really. I mean, sure, it's meaningful and to many people and things. I just didn't get. I didn't feel spiritually nourished, particularly by it. But that being said, that doesn't mean that I somehow want to take away how many people find that meaningful. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
In their lives, and so as somebody who feels a deep affinity for liturgy and deep meaning in a lot of these things, while that isn't my particular, I don't know, maybe I'm not articulating it right. Maybe that isn't maybe that isn't what I feel affinity for, but I've used that word a couple of times. But I still think if people want it, they should be able to go to it. They should have access to it. And they're right. It's it would do more harm than good, because maybe it would make people disillusioned about their faith in some respect, and that's I don't think it's a good thing at all. I mean,
I get the impression that Pope Francis picked a fight that didn't need picking, and that's a terribly awful thing to do at a time when the church is already struggling to keep its unity. You've got, way out on the traditionalist side, the sort of edge of the universe, you've got those people who simply reject Vatican II. Vatican II was not a proper council and whatnot. And you've got those on the far left of the church saying, well, Vatican II is the only council that matters. None of the other councils matter. And both are wrong, but it takes a deft hand to balance both. Otherwise, the church is kind of going to pull itself apart. And people are already suspicious enough about synodality and all of the nonsense that was dragged up by certain synods. I'm not naming names, but they're European synods. And so you're in the context of the church kind of struggling a bit to keep its unity, and then you drop this atomic bomb of saying, well, we're going to suppress the Latin Mass. Now, I can understand that if there was good evidence that the Latin Mass was attracting or teaching that Vatican II was not a proper council or something like that. But it actually seems that the bishops... Go on.
Sorry.
Well, it actually...
No, I was going to say... Sorry. I was going to say, I don't know a lot of people who found... a lot of people who... Let's just say the few people that I found, some of them, not all of them, who find meaning in the Latin Mass, sort of use it almost as as an air of superiority, like I'm better than you, or I'm holier than you, or God loves me more than you, or somehow I'm holier, or somehow, it just seems to be a complaint about everything that isn't the traditional Latin Mass, everything, it just seems to be just one gigantic kind of complaint. Um, you know, obviously I don't know everybody, and I don't know most people that go to the Latin Mass, but it seems the few that I've had interactions with have been just sort of an uncharitable bunch, just really almost kind of like, hey, here's why everything stinks in the church and why you all stink and why the Pope stinks. It's just a fatalism, and it's just the Satan he's getting a foothold because of Vatican II. In if I was going to be charitable, I could only think that might have been one of the reasons why Pope Francis might have been leaning there. What are your thoughts on that? Because to me, there is some of that kind of, hey, God loves me best because I pray in Latin, and that's sort of the wrong.
Yeah, well, I've kind of met the type, and maybe they're not common. Maybe they're 1 in 100 Catholics or something like that. But they are very arrogant. They think they're the faithful remnant of the church, and everyone else is just lost in this so-called Vatican II church, which is a sort of ironic name, but they can be uncharitable at times and whatnot. But I think that's, it's fairly rare. But I don't think I sort of think that far more common are people who are concerned about what they call the fruits of Vatican II, because it all seems to go to hell in a handbasket after Vatican II. And so what we didn't need is Pope Francis suppressing it, especially if these documents are true. He suppressed it on a lie. He's saying the bishops agreed with him that the church needed to suppress the Latin Mass, and it turns out the bishops said almost exactly the opposite. The majority of the bishops, anyway.
Well, I can't speak to that, but I can, I can also sort of preface my earlier statement to say that I have been to some more I guess I don't like the word conservative or liberal, traditional minded, maybe, sort of where, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I might actually agree with some of this, just sort of a, you go to this particular parish and it seems like the 1950s threw up inside there, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, you've got young, attractive families, you have children running around the place. There seems to be an air of reverence, traditional gender roles, family values, a vibrant community. And so the few that I've been to, I said that what I said previously, and maybe that's just sort of some people that I've met online or something like that, which I don't think online, whatever the values or belief system is really a good amalgam of what most people believe. But I would say that I was always warmly welcomed, and sort of, like I said, there's something very attractive about this close-knit community where they had a mother and a father, and they had children, and they had elderly there, they had families, and they had, there was sort of a clear-cut line of, this is sacred and this is profane, kneeling and bowing in reverence and dressing modestly and things like that. There seemed to be also this sense that was very attractive, given the fact that culture today is, at least from my personal perspective, can be confusing, can be scary, with things in the culture just changing so fast. What was acceptable 5 minutes ago is no longer acceptable socially or culturally. Does that make sense? So there's that side of it where there seems to be something very attractive about, this is we have a very well defined and disciplined Catholic identity at this particular parish, family identity, religious identity. There was a simplistic beauty about that where, things just tend to, it seemed more like a smaller town kind of vibe where things are just kind of, they made more sense, just sort of like, what grandparents tell us about growing up in a time when no one locked their doors, or, you played till the street lights. It just seemed like that was kind of like a small cosm of that in that particular parish, and it's quite attractive, actually.
Yeah, well, I remember as a kid we'd go to the fish shop on a Friday night because it was Fish Friday, and every Catholic or every second Catholic in the parish would be down at the fish shop doing exactly what we would be doing, and it was kind of nice because it always sort of made me smile that that all the Catholics have got the same idea in their mind. They're going to get, a piece of fish and some chips on a Friday night. But whether or not, the suppression, I guess my picture of it is more on a universal ecclesiological question. Did we really need to suppress the Latin Mass? Whether or not you and I go to it, I don't. I go to Novus Ordo, and I believe you do too.
Yeah.
But why?
We're actually doing I like to call myself a neo-traditional. So I like the tasteful vernacular hymns, but I prefer more the sacred music than the contemporary music. I like a nice communion rail. I like communion on the tongue, although it's perfectly acceptable to take it in the hand. That's fine. I prefer a lot of children in the church screaming and crying. I don't think we need a cry room. I like my architecture. I don't want the Vatican to throw up in there with stained glass statues, but a few tasteful statues, and like I said, a communion rail and perpetual adoration and a sense of holiness. But why do you chuckle at that?
No, because I was thinking of a particular parish in Melbourne which shall remain nameless, but there's this big 6 foot tall imposing statue of who is it? Not Saint Anthony. It's who's the Italian priest who had the stigmata more recent than
Saint Francis.
Padre Pio.
Padre Pio, yeah.
Padre Pio. There's this big 6 foot tall imposing statue of Padre Pio. They've tried to sort of move it to the side of the church, but it's still massive, and it's just like, I'm not sure that's tasteful, but whatever. They're mad for Padre Pio down there. They love Padre Pio. Anyway. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like we shouldn't have suppressed the Latin Mass. And when I say we, I mean Pope Francis should not have suppressed the Latin Mass, especially in the face of having written to the bishops and them saying, no, don't mess with it. Everything's fine the way it is. And then he jumps up and says, well, the majority of the bishops agree that we should suppress the Latin Mass. Well, that's a lie, Pope Francis. And it's hard to see how Francis didn't lie to the church about that, which my brother suggested that'll set back his sainthood a couple of decades. Maybe not. I don't know, but it's hard to read these documents and not conclude that we were lied to, and that's got to make the sort of traditional Latin Mass adherents hopping mad. I mean, they'd have to be hopping mad about that.
I
Well,
just want to stop and give a shout out to Tums. Tums, in case you have gas, this is good stuff. So maybe we can get Tums to. Stupid.
okay, thank you. Okay, Trump's big beautiful bill. It's officially known as the One Big Beautiful Bill. Is a sweeping tax and spending package.
Only he would come up with a name like that
Oh,
instead of House Resolution 102.
Beautiful. It's magnificent. No one. People are saying they've never seen anything like this. Yeah. Okay.
And every time he moves his hands when he's talking, it's like he's playing on a
He's making
magic
it bigger
accordion.
and more beautiful and more beautiful. Like, it's like
It's a magic accordion.
like Freddy Krueger going down an alleyway. You know? Yeah. But I think I don't know much about it, to be honest. I know Trump's
I
keen
understand
on it.
it's. Go ahead.
I know Trump's keen on it. I just don't know, like, what's in it apart from a deficit.
Well, it expands the resources for the immigration and customs enforcement.
That's true. I think someone said from 5,000 agents to 15,000 agents. So going to triple the size of ICE, basically, which is okay.
Well, let me ask you this. Yeah, let me ask you this, because I like how what I want to see us discuss is not just, the story, but maybe, obviously it sounds like what we're doing here is, giving a Catholic spin on these things, right? And so this idea of the alligator Alcatraz, how do I feel about that?
Oh, can we talk about alligator Alcatraz?
Can we?
Yeah, why not?
Sure, but I'm saying, like, from a moral perspective, I don't know if I agree with it. Just kind of putting people in camps with alligators around a moat.
I don't mind it at all, really. I mean, if you're going to deport people, and if people are there illegally, then I see no reason to say, okay, you've had your process, you've not been determined to be a refugee, so we're going to send you home. I don't think that's against any Catholic teaching at all, really.
But the idea of having alligators around it just as a troll?
It's very Trumpian, isn't it? But I mean, it serves a practical purpose, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's people escape, they get eaten by alligators. Is that really the image you want to be sending?
Don't escape. Would be my advice. You're better off with the plane trip and the in-cabin meal than becoming a meal to an alligator. I mean, it's really a question of you're not. It's not like we're taking, immigrants and saying, "Here, you chuck him to the alligators." That's not what's happening, though. It's just there's a minimal perimeter, mostly to keep the alligators out, and you know very well that you can't escape from deportation, because if you do, you'll probably end up the meal of a python or an alligator or an anaconda or whatever the hell lives in rural Florida. I mean, I don't see a problem with it. I think it's brash, and I think it's, you said it's a troll. I'm not sure if it's a troll exactly.
It doesn't seem very presidential.
Very Christian, did you say?
No, presidential.
But is Trump presidential?
No.
Not really. He's not like, okay, I stand by his the president of the United States, and you play the and then he stands up, my fellow Americans. He gives these, hello, how you going, blah blah blah. He's not very presidential in his in his style. He's kind of a different type of leader. But I mean, the last couple of weeks has proven that he's an effective leader. He can, herd the cats of Congress to pass his bill. He's silenced Iran, whilst at the same time putting back their nuclear program by at least 5 years. He's working on a ceasefire for the Gazans and the Israelis. So he is an effective leader, but I just don't think he's. I think if you're looking for a traditional president, you wouldn't think Trump is a traditional president.
Well, yeah, the idea of alligator sport, I don't know.
Come on, isn't it funny though? Is there something funny about it?
Yeah, we're playing with people's lives, though. I mean, do we want it to be funny?
Yeah, but your life's not at risk unless you jump the fence. It's like having an electric fence there.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not the Squid Games. We don't helicopter someone into the middle of the what do you call it?
It's not the Hunger Games.
Are they called the Everglades, or is that right?
The Everglades, yeah.
Yeah, okay. We don't
Survivor.
We don't chuck someone right? out of a helicopter in the middle of the Everglades and say good luck with the alligators. I mean, you're okay as long as you stay in the camp.
Well, yeah, it's like that would really be jacked up if it was like, hey, if you make it out of the Everglades alive, you're whatever on the end of a
you get a visa. If you make it to Miami, you get a visa.
But it's like the last man standing, right? So then you've got to climb up this thing and you got to push other people down. And I've never seen the Squid Games, but maybe the Hunger Games.
I've never seen the Squid Games. I just know what I've seen. I've never seen it. It might be a rubbish show.
Have you ever heard of the Hunger Games?
I haven't seen that either. I know of it, but I've never seen it. But,
you ever heard of Escape from New York?
Yeah, I seem to recall I've read that
was
somewhere.
Russell back in the 80s.
Is it? Yeah, and all of New York was like a prison or something?
Yeah, and so this guy gets dumped in the middle, like flown in a helicopter and dumped in the middle. And and it's like New York Island is basically, Manhattan is basically just fenced in, right? But if you can get out, then you get your freedom or whatever. Kind of like, what was that, The Running Man kind of deal? Like you put it on TV and you kind of like sell advertising. Terminator, and sell it on paper. I mean, you could. I mean, if we really wanted to be dark, we could put it on pay-per-view and on cable and sell tickets, and then you sort of bounce the budget, pay off the debt, because you pay $29.95 and you take bets on who's your favorite illegal alien this week. I don't know. I think that's what some people are thinking in their mind. I know it sounds possible.
Yeah, but the reality of it is a whole lot less exciting than that. I mean, I know Trump's, we've got a big, beautiful camp surrounded by alligators, and I know Trump, and he plays it up, and he likes to make a sort of...
He's trolling the media because he knows the media is going to ratchet it up to a 13.
Well, CNN's going to lose their mind. MSN, Joy Reid is going to lose her sanity over Trump. One way or the other.
She called it alligator Auschwitz, I believe is what she called it.
Like one by one, we send the Jews out to be eaten by alligators.
Yeah. Look, to a point, some of Trump's antics get kind of tiresome, but
yeah, I agree.
But hold on. The idea is no matter what he does, he could cure cancer, and they'd say, "Look, I told you the story about his brother dying of alcoholism, and he gave up there, and he said they always ask me why I never drink alcohol. Well, my brother died of cirrhosis of the liver and alcoholism, so I don't touch the stuff. I loved Fred. Fred was my best friend." And Don Lemond and some other wanker said, I don't know, is colorful language not going to be allowed on this thing, or are we going to just say what we want here?
Say what you want, as far as I know. I think that, you know, I think if you're a thinking chatter, keep the language to a minimum, but, you know, you're allowed to swear. It's the internet, isn't it? Like, it's the Wild West.
Okay. Sure, okay. But anyway, they were like, "Oh, he's against people who drink." No, they couldn't say, "Well, gee, you know, I really respect the fact that, you know, hey, I don't like the guy. I don't particularly care for him as a human being. In fact, I kind of think he's lonesome." But if they could have gone on there and kind of go, "Okay, you know, he doesn't drink because his brother, and that's sad that his brother died. Good on him for not drinking alcohol, because, you know, he doesn't want to end up like his." No,
Yeah,
no,
I
no.
don't.
He's against people that drink.
You know, as much as I think it's an appalling life decision not to drink. I think that I think Trump's entitled not to drink without the press saying, "You see, he's a Puritan" or something like that. You know, it's just ridiculous.
Well, I'm sure you understand. Some people shouldn't drink.
Yeah, well, some people shouldn't drink. Yeah, they
Yeah,
get angry or out of control or something like that.
with their wives or whatever. But if you choose
slap
not
around
to
their wives.
drink, you shouldn't. Yeah, but if you choose not to drink, there shouldn't need an explanation one way or another. Hey, I don't drink. Well, why? You're stupid. No, I just choose not to.
Yeah,
My
and
choice,
I don't mind that. But like you said, if Trump cured cancer, they'd say thousands of doctors out of work. You know, I mean, you can't win with the press.
So bringing it back to what we were saying, maybe he just doesn't give a shit anymore about the alligators, and just he'll say the most bombastic, stupid thing on the face of the planet, whether he believes it or not.
No, it's always a trap.
Because you know these people.
It's always a landmine.
Yeah.
It's always a landmine.
Yeah.
When Trump says something bombastic, he's
It's
always got
existential.
to follow up. He's got, because he predicts the press. They're so predictable in the US. The press will have a take on it. Oh, Trump's making an alligator, and then there's always a follow up. He's always ready with the next move, which I find is, you know, is interesting. It's not just bombast. Because I agree with you. Like, at times Trump is like, "Come on, man, just get serious about running the government." But I think he's clever enough to realise that he can be president as well as troll the press at the same time.
Personally, I think he's having a hell of a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, he loves being president. He
does, and he loves the attention.
People
And
say
he
to me,
refers to himself in the
"Mr.
third
Trump, how do you run such a great government?" Yeah, okay.
You're going to say, "Sir, we're tired of winning. We can't take any more winning.
That's
Stop,
right.
it's too much."
It's too much winning. Yeah, come on, Trump. Just get on with running the
But you
government.
know, that did happen. We did win, and it's like, you know, we are. But the thing is, I mean, for all that it's worth, I mean, he is juvenile, childish. He doesn't have to go after everybody. Rosie O'Donnell smells. She's really fat, stupid. It's like, you don't have to go after every single person that attacks you. You just learn to ignore it and let some of that stuff go. But the thing is that he's having fun, and he's probably a psychopath, and whatever. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, but I'm not.
saying that.
No, I'm not sure that everyone who's president isn't part psychopath.
Yeah.
You know what? You got to have something built differently to be president. It's grueling to go through the nomination and all that sort of stuff. So you've got to really have a lot of self-faith. I, Mr. Trump, am the best one to run the country. Not the second best, not the third best. I am the one, and that's what
Yeah,
everyone
everyone should pay attention to my ideas.
yeah.
Well, like I wake up in the morning, like if I said that, you'd lock me away. I mean, like I don't have the guts to say that because I don't think that. I think if I got, and I'm pretty sure I can speak for you too. If we got anywhere near power, it'd be a really horrible day.
I'd be
Right?
I'd be
If you're listening
crippled.
to me, oh my God,
I'd be crippled with self-doubt. I'm not like Wazander.
right?
Wazander's this guy that Marsh and I know on the internet, and he believes he's the Messiah, and he just talks matter-of-factly like, yeah, but I say that actually God is close to all of us. And it's like, hang on what authority do you speak? He says, well, I'm the Messiah. It's like, okay, well, fair enough.
And you really, I mean, you can't falsify that.
No, you can't prove he's not the Messiah. That's right. Yeah.
Right. And so you just kind of have to go, okay, well, whatever.
Okay.
Because he's so matter of fact about it. I mean, he's not playing a character. He truly believes it. And he's not playing a character because he never deviates.
Do you think he
never
truly believes
deviates.
it? Does he truly believe it?
Yes.
Hmm.
I believe, I've learned it. I'll tell you how I know. In the past, I've worked late at night, overnights. As a security officer, late at night when you're in a building with nothing to do, you troll around on the internet and you start listening to what people are saying. And I've heard this guy go on and on and on, 2 and 3 hours without missing a step, with saying, I'm the Messiah. Here's why I'm the Messiah. Here are the supporting scriptures why I'm the Messiah. Here's why you need to think I'm the Messiah. There's no deviation. There's no, hey guys, this is all a put on. I'm really just joking here. He doesn't laugh. He doesn't, me, I'd break character. After a while, I mean, you either have to be the greatest con man in the world to be able to my point is, he's playing it straight the whole time. For hours and hours and hours. Do you see my point? He's playing it straight.
Yeah, but
so he's not.
But what's interesting about that pathology is there's not a skerrick of self-doubt. There's never a time going, well, I don't know. It's always just he's certain about what's true.
Well, that woman is like that, but and I won't mention the room's name, but my point, yeah, but I knew a guy when I was back in Dallas. He thought he was Jesus Christ, and there's a lot of people in that community that thought that.
Yeah, was he in the booby hatch or where?
Yeah, he was in the booby hatch, but his story never changed. He had reasons, and he had not documents, but he had like a lot. Okay, so like people like Wazander. Right. His deal is that he takes these disparate facts, and this is the issue with conspiracy theories. You take these disparate facts and you use a really wacky and wonky logic to get there, but you get there. And it's like, well, and the point is, on some level, you have to there and say, well, I don't start with your I think your premise is here, went there and went there and went there. I mean, you can see on some booby hatch kind of way I did that conclusion. So the point is, he really, I don't know if he thinks he's Jesus. It's never gotten to that point. He doesn't really take questions. He doesn't really do press conferences. Well, can we interview the Messiah? I mean, that's a pretty tall order. Hey, how about a couple of questions? Marsh from ABC. It's like, no, but there's like no deviation from it. So my point is that if you are sitting there saying you're the Messiah, so he believes it.
Yeah, but he gets brutally
attacked. He believes it.
He gets brutally. He must have a thick hide because he gets brutally attacked.
He does. He does. But that's my point. That's my point. he's delusional. Well, don't delusional people believe they're delusional? I mean, if you didn't believe you're
Yeah,
delusional,
well, you believe the delusion. Yeah, yeah. I mean, in spite of obvious facts, I think it's most delusions. I think are based on, well, I'm the Messiah, because you can't prove you're not the Messiah. So most delusions sort of float in this nebulous area of, well, you can never bring out a killer fact to destroy the delusion. They're all very nebulous. It's all
I think
about.
that's what's going on with the delusion. I don't think why people are delusional, but I think they're delusional because, well, obviously, probably some organic brain disorder or whatever, some trauma. But I asked my therapist this question, and on your podcast, I'm going to be very open about some of my recent struggles and stuff. But the point is my choice. But my point is, I said, do you think I'm going crazy? I feel like I'm going crazy with some of the recent things in my life. And he says, no. And that really made me feel good. I said, why don't you think, in your clinical estimation, why do you think I'm not crazy? And he said, because crazy people don't ask if they're crazy. So he said, the man that's walking down the street yelling at the lamppost actually thinks the lamppost is a person. He doesn't think that's a lamppost that he's yelling at. He thinks that's a person. He thinks himself to be Napoleon Bonaparte. So the point is that if you have to ask, it's like if you're a psychic, if you ever like get anxious and say like, am I really an evil person? Am I a bad person?
I just
thinking if you ask the question, you're not, because evil people don't. They don't go, gee, I might be evil. I should have, kicked over the puppies and pushed over Mrs. McCraggedy down the flight of stairs. I don't think, was that right? They don't question. They just have no issue.
One of
That's not an endorsement of kicking Mrs. McCraggedy down.
No, fair enough. Leave Mrs. McCraggedy alone. That's for our two listeners. In case you're out there, Mrs. McCraggedy is struggling with her shopping. Help her with shopping. Don't kick her down the stairs. One of my neighbourhood characters is Gerald, and I know you know about that, but just for the listeners, of which, by the way, there's two listeners at the moment, so we've got an audience.
Do you know them?
No. So we've got.
Hi, listener.
We've got Gerald. Gerald is a guy. He walks to the shops every day, very early, about 7 a.m. or something, and he pushes his trolley. And he's always shouting to himself. He's always just.
I've actually heard him.
Incoherently.
I've heard him through your speakers.
Incoherent screaming as he walks down the street at 7 a.m. And I think everyone in the neighbourhood either uses him as an alarm clock. It's like, oh, there's Gerald, but another day at work, I better get out of bed. Or just says, oh, that's Gerald. What are you going to do? Hey, it's Gerald. But I don't know what or who he's arguing with. Possibly the voices. Pardon me.
I know it's easy to sort of make jokes, but that happened to a friend of mine and listen to the voices. And the voices told him to take it from the right. I had another friend who passed away. I actually found him in his apartment in Hot August City, Texas. That was not. And he would bellow. This fellow, he would bellow and he would just scream at the top, like bellow out loud. And I said, Anthony, why do you do that? And he said, because it was pressure in my head. And I said, and I've spoken to Anthony. He didn't have dissociative. It's not called multiple personality disorder. It's called dissociative identity disorder now. But he didn't have that. He was a paranoid schizophrenic. But he had personalities in his brain that would interact with him. So they wouldn't. It wasn't like he didn't have an alter. In a DID thing, an absolutely different personality will take over. that's not what would happen. But he would say, well, that's Sylvester, or that's this person or that person. I said, well, how many people do you have in you? And he said, solar system. So he would bellow as a way to alleviate what he said was like a pressure valve in his brain. And he said the voices spoke three things to him: to kill himself, to kill others, and to commit acts of homosexuality, of which he was disgusted.
He was morally against homosexuality, but the voices in his head would tell him to carry on with that.
Right, or kill himself or other people. Right.
Whew.
And,
yeah. It's appalling when you think, what happened in the Middle Ages when people had schizophrenia. According to my brother, they just tied him up in the village. They just tied him to a tree or something and said, good luck with your projects. And they'd bring him some food and water each day, but that was the treatment. The recognised treatment.
Probably either the demoniacs or the other thing.
No, there seems to be a recognition, even in the Middle Ages, of this condition which we now call schizophrenia. There seems to be an understanding.
Lunacy, they call it?
Yeah, who knows? I mean, I think it kind of all bleeds into one in the Middle Ages. Like, they don't have a diagnostic manual, as it were. But there was a recognition that you could hear voices, and that meant you're crazy. And that meant, well, we'll probably tie you to the tree in the village and go about.
Actually, I've read stories where they had lunatic asylums, and basically they would just toss you in a cell, in a dungeon. And the really sad thing is that they had a hole in the wall where you paid a penny and you talk at the patient. It's sort of, we sort of make fun of that once in a while, just some of the blunt behavior. But it's quite sad. I mean, I know my own grandmother killed herself in 1968 when my mother was 8 years old, which speaks to a lot. But had she had proper, she's been abused by her husband and everything, but she had proper medications, therapy, some support, who knows, so.
Well, the treatment for mental illness has undoubtedly come a long way, but there's still a long way to go, I think. The medications are appalling. The therapy is questionably helpful. We really, I mean, the holy grail would be if there's a pill which can cure you of depression or schizophrenia or whatever. That would be the holy grail. So there's a long way to go for that. Genetically,
we just don't know enough about the human brain.
Yeah, well, they don't genetically know what causes schizophrenia, because it could be 1,000 different genes involved in it, but no one knows, because that was the hope, that they'd instantly find out right there is the gene that causes schizophrenia, and all we have to do is switch it off. It's not that easy, apparently. Anyway, I watched a movie. Have you ever seen M? It's a German film with Peter Lorre in it. It's called M.
Never heard of them. What's that about?
Okay, so it's about a child killer. It's rather dark in its premise, that there's this guy who goes around killing children, kidnapping and killing children. And the police can't solve the crime because he never leaves clues. And the townspeople are upset because the police keep raiding everywhere because they're looking for this killer. And they keep raiding, all of their sort of gaming houses and brothels. And so the townspeople are just as angry. Anyway, the townspeople get together and say, okay, well, we're going to find this guy ourselves. And they, through various sort of, well, they put agents on the street and finally track down the guy. And they have like a sort of informal trial for the guy. M19, none of it. No.
Peter Lorre. Why do I know that name?
Peter
Who did he
Lorre,
play?
he's famous. This is a German film, but it had English subtitles, and my brother put me onto it.
Who? How might I know? Why do I know that name, Peter Lorre?
Because he's Peter Lorre. He's quite a characteristic voice, and he's been in a stack of movies, often opposite Sydney Greenstreet. He's in.
Was he like Agar? Was he like Igor?
A bit of an Igor figure, yeah, that's right. Yeah, and he was in.
Igor.
He was in the what's it called? The Maltese Falcon. The Maltese Falcon, but I'm not sure if you've seen that, or plenty of other films. He was in, often with Sydney Greenstreet, and he would have a sort of Igor-esque voice. But anyway, I can't find it now, but it was a good film. It's available on YouTube. I can't remember the year, but it's about 1929 or something like that. Where are we at? We've been going for 51 minutes.
How are our viewers looking?
We've got 2 viewers. Welcome, viewers, in the chat. Thanks for joining us. This is.
How do you know it's not us and you're just the county?
No, it's not us. No, because I've seen it go up and down.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
And there we go. All right, shall we close it up?
If you want to, I'm fine doing whatever you.
Well, okay. Well, I suppose. What do we talk about next?
It's July 4th
Oh.
here in the States, and I only saw one go up, probably across the river. They're going to do some stuff, but what time is it? If they haven't, it's 10 o'clock. If they haven't done anything by now, they're not going to. Thank God.
You think
it's just they get a bit obnoxious.
they might behave themselves tonight?
And then, well, not necessarily here, but in certain parts of the city. I mean, they'll shoot up firearms and.
Ba da 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 da. Okay.
Well, because they don't believe in the theory of gravity.
They don't believe
Wow,
you.
I only showed that you and I.
No, because you're on Discord. You're not in Kick.
Oh, I'm not on Kick. Yeah.
I've got Kick open and I'm seeing our stream now.
So we're streaming through Discord onto Kick. Is what you're saying?
Yes, that's right. We're using Discord for the video and audio, and then that's going to a program called OBS, and then that's sent to Kick.
Kick.
And it's streaming. Yeah, Kick, which is kind of one of the smaller streaming companies, but it's got good potential because Twitch can't behave themselves. Did you see your mate Hassan Piker the other day?
My mate,
I know. I always say that.
Why is he my mate? I don't know any of these people. It's like when people say you're my boy, like we kick him in the head. What are you talking
Well, Hassan Piker, he got insulted or someone said hurtful things to him in chat the other day on Twitch, and he pulled out a gun and sort of was walking around with a gun, sort of, what are you going to do, bro? What are you going to do, bro? So he's brandishing a pistol, and it was just but he should get banned for it. You know, at least a
Yeah.
week. Make some effort to discipline the guy. But of course he
Right.
won't, because he gets away with blue murder on Twitch, which is why I think Twitch has a use-by date already, because if they're going to carry on like that, then people are going to say, okay, well, why not go to Kick or something else, which is Kick has grown, I think, 20% in the last month or something like that. I haven't actually analysed the figures, but, you know, so we're streaming on Kick because Twitch is, like, apparently the domain of Hassan Piker.
Okay, so let's talk about something. How about Charles Manson? Well, that's always an interesting topic.
I always love serial killer chat. You know I love serial killer chat.
Serial killer chat or Bigfoot chat or cryptid chat. That's the thing. I have to do some research about some, and then we can talk about these cryptids that exist.
Well, isn't there a Minnesota ice guy or something? Didn't I look that
I
up?
haven't heard
once?
of him, but yeah, I mean, in Wisconsin, there's a thing called a, and I was kind of being a dick because I was in the line about cryptids, and I said, well, what's a Wendigo? And he said, shh, don't say the word Wendigo. And I said, really, why shouldn't you say the word Wendigo?
Your mic's
I
popping.
said, so I'll make sure huh?
Your mic is popping.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, just speak slowly and clearly.
So I was being a jerk because they were going on about a Wendigo, and they said, shh, don't say Wendigo, because I kept asking about it because it's this taboo thing, and they were like, shh, don't say the word Wendigo, and I said, well, why not? Well, if you say Wendigo, and of course me, because I'm about 12, so if I say Wendigo, don't say Wendigo because, and they ended up kicking me out of their forum because, seriously, you know. They wouldn't even tell me what the Wendigo was. They just said, don't say the word Wendigo.
Well, what is a Wendigo?
Wendigo.
I've heard the
I don't
word.
know.
I've heard the word before. Wendigo. Wendigo. All right.
There's all these sort of Indian tribes up
Okay,
here.
here we go. It's a Wendigo, by the way.
Ojibwe. Okay.
Wendigo is a mythological creature or evil spirit originating from Algonquian folklore. Okay. The concept of the Wendigo has been widely used in literature and other works of art, such as social commentary or horror fiction. The Wendigo is often said to be a malevolent spirit, sometimes depicted as a creature with human-like characteristics, who may possess human beings. It is said to cause its victims a feeling of insatiable hunger, the desire to eat other humans, and the propensity to commit murder. Okay. He sounds like a lovely
Some
chap.
guy that hangs out in the woods of Wisconsin.
Is that where he's from, Wisconsin?
I think he's from Wisconsin. Yeah, but there's like
What's
there's
it?
here in Minnesota. There's like the, you know, the Ojibwe, the Lakota Sioux, different Indian tribes they had. And it was so stupid. Over here in Minneapolis, right? And for the viewers, I'm not originally from Minnesota. I'm a Texan. I will always be a Texan. I went to high school in Hollywood, California, but I'm a Texan. But here, they have this lake called Lake Calhoun, and John C. Calhoun, I think, was a governor or something, or president or whatever. And he was a slave owner, so they were like,
Talk
well,
slowly and clearly.
Do what?
Talk slowly and clearly.
Okay, sorry. And so they changed the name to some unpronounceable Indian name. And I don't even think they asked the tribe what they thought. They changed the name of this lake, and nobody really cared. It's like we feel virtuous about ourselves, these white liberals that felt really good about themselves. And, you know.
Yeah, well, they
I
do
don't know
the
them,
same
but-
in Australia. They do the same in Australia for the Aborigines. They rename Melbourne. You know, this is the... You get, first of all, like this little paraliturgy we acknowledge the owners of this land, the Wurundjeri people, and we give reverence to their leaders, past their what are not leaders? It's whatever
Ancestors.
ancestors or something. Yeah, and it's all very stupid, and I think it's only to make Liberals feel better about walking all over Melbourne or something like that. You know, they've got to do this.
They're not going to give the money back, or
No, they're not going to open their wallets. Yeah, they don't mind if the government opens their wallets and gives them money, but they personally just do this kind of little blessing upon themselves so they feel comfortable walking around on what is actually Aboriginal land, which is probably parts of Melbourne are Aboriginal land and parts of Melbourne were just open spaces.
I don't know, Minnesota Iceman. I'll have to do some, there's some fireworks over there. Looks like several are going off at once. But anyway, the Iceman, you're not gonna hear anything, you're not gonna hear about a swamp creature in Minnesota. So, it obviously came about because of their culture and their values and beliefs. I mean, it didn't just spring out of nothing.
Well, I guess, we've had...
I gotta sneeze.
Sorry?
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I guess, myths by their nature, you base it on something that's around you. The mountain over there, the river here, that's what animism is all about, isn't it? But these cryptids are I don't know, they're fun to listen about. They're fun to talk about, cryptids,
Yeah, some people apparently take them way too seriously, but...
Yeah, well, I heard a story of a guy who was driving and he made a bad turn and went down some country road, and then he saw what he thought was a skinwalker. So they turned around their car and raced out of there, and they were racing home, and the police pulled him over, and they, what's your excuse for driving so fast? And he said, man, I thought I saw a skinwalker, up on Browns Road or whatever. And the policeman got scared and he said, okay, go home, just don't speed. And then the policeman himself was scared of this idea of skinwalkers as well. I don't get it, to be honest. I've never worried about a skinwalker.
Yeah, and if I was the cop, you've been doing a little boozing tonight, have you? No, but that's actually interesting. I listened to this talk, saw this video, one of the reasons why the early Christians, the Jewish believers, right after Jesus, I love our stream of consciousness. We could call this, but anyway, how probably the resurrection narrative probably was mass hallucination, because you don't hallucinate things that you have no idea about. So when you hallucinate, it's like based on things you've already seen and know and believe and kind of are familiar with. So it's this idea that Christ was a Messiah dying, being buried and resurrecting, is foreign to sort of the Jewish belief of the time. So they probably didn't hallucinate this idea of a Christ rising from the grave. Do you have any thoughts on that? Because they had no cultural reference. They had no reference point for a rising, a sacrificing Messiah.
Well, I was talking to one of my brothers once, and he was saying people in India, when they have hallucinations of apocalyptic things happening, it's all within the Hindu context. It's it's the Lord Shiva and Kali Ma and all that sort of stuff. So there's some truth in what you're saying, but
meaning I forget what it's called, but I forget the argument that it's called, but basically, like, just to make something up like that whole cloth, that no one would be kind of like talking. If they were going to make the story believable, no one was expecting sort of a suffering Messiah. They were looking for a political leader to rescue them from the Romans. I just think that's interesting. But get back to serial killers, he said on Stream of Consciousness Radio. I'd like, maybe we could call it that, Stream of Consciousness
From the
Radio.
Wendigo straight to apocalyptic literature, and then straight to serial killers, which seems a smooth transition.
My mother always used to say, I didn't make the jump to hyperspace.
Who's your favorite serial killer?
What kind of question is that? My favorite? Really. I like how he hacked this woman to death and raped her and left her for dead and bleeding out. Yeah, hey, what a wonderful thing. I don't know about favorite, but the one I seem to know, he's the one that scares me the most.
Hang on, what's wrong? Just move your light. You're flaring. The lamp's flaring. Yeah, there you go. Which one? Sorry.
I'm sorry. I don't know if favorite is the right word to use. Is that better with the light?
Yep. But
I don't know why.
It doesn't matter. Okay, favorite was just tongue in cheek. But who is it?
All right. Richard Ramirez. It's the one I know most about and the scares.
He'd never showered. He smelled like a goat, man. I wouldn't tell him that, like, unless there were plenty of cops around, but...
hey, mate, you smell like a goat.
Geez, you smell like a goat. It's like, okay.
Harry had some really fucked up teeth, too.
Yeah. Yeah, some pretty gnarly teeth happening. I mean, he must have been on drugs, was he?
Yeah, he was on drugs.
What sort of drugs was he on? I mean, you don't just... Sorry?
You don't just wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to, do some crack or whatever. I mean, that meth, crack, probably whatever he could get his hands on.
Yeah, meth or crack. Because you don't just smoke a joint and go, do you know what I feel like doing? Killing some women or something like that. That's not smoking a joint sort of behaviour. Smoking a joint, you're more likely to say, do you know what I feel like doing? Watching cartoons and going to bed and having a bowl of cereal. I guess there you go. You become a serial killer. Hang on.
Okay, go ahead.
Where's the noise? Hang on. I can't. Oh, it's in. Hang on. Which one should we do? There we go.
Late, but hey, it's a work in progress. I mean, you get up, you attack, you murder a pizza and watch the Three Stooges for 3 hours, and you're married to me because Anthony hates the Three Stooges.
Yeah.
But anyway, no.
BTK is a pretty awful guy. Like, I've watched a couple of his docos on YouTube, and you start to get an insight. This is a really malevolent guy. I mean, look.
I agree with you, and I agree with you, and I'll tell you why. Because he doesn't. If you do nothing about it, right? If you just saw him, you're at Kohl's or whatever, and you're pushing your shopping trolley, and you're in section, and you got some bread and some milk and some peanut butter, whatever, and some meat for the week. Spaghetti sounds good tonight. And you see this walrus mustache and he's bald with these stupid 80s glasses on. He looks like an accountant. He looks just like everybody else. He looks like some guy with a pot belly, and he's probably got dad jokes, and he probably takes his daughter to school in a minivan. She gets embarrassed and wants to be dropped off 3 blocks from the school because he's so annoying. He's dad, he's an annoying dad, a suburban dad. I think that's what scares me most about him. If I knew nothing about him, if I knew nothing about the fact that he, like, if he was your neighbor and you had no, if he was your neighbor and you saw him every,
Hang on.
you know,
You're
even if you
popping
knew that
again.
he was the complete, what happened?
You're popping again. Go on,
Okay.
just talk calmly and into the mic.
Okay. I'm saying if you didn't know anything about the guy, just on appearances alone, he would be the most unassuming, nerdy, geeky, suburban dad you ever seen.
I already don't trust him because he's a local ordnance inspector or whatever he was. I already think that guy's probably awful. Well, you know, he's the sort of.
He was an accountant. Yeah, he worked for the IRS.
I wouldn't mind that so much as a local council inspector of saying, you know, here's a $50 fine because you didn't pick up your dog poop or something like that. It's like, that guy's already a bit evil.
Yeah, but go have a look at him. He looks suit. He looks like a stupid bureaucratic suit.
Yeah. A bureaucrat.
He doesn't
The sort of bureaucrat who loves bureaucracy.
just for bureaucracy's sake.
Mm.
Yeah.
My guy is,
But if you thought-
as you know, my guy's always been Ted Bundy because I find, you know, the image he puts forward as a wholesome, almost all-American guy, and then underneath that is this whole malevolent world. Yeah, it's flaring in the camera a bit. That's better. Try that. Yeah, that's better. So Ted Bundy sort of strikes me as able to pull off the act, like being able to play it straight. G'day, how you going? Do you want a game of tennis later? Sure. No. Hang on, no, you're flaring again. That lamp is flaring. Just turn it slightly to that's better. There we go. So yeah, Ted Bundy, because he can put on a good act. He looks like he knows how to use a knife and fork. He looks like, you know, if I was a girl, which I'm not, but if I was, I'd think, you know, there's a guy you could take home to mother. You know,
He knows how to use.
well, don't you think? Like he can carry it off. Like he's almost a perfect social chameleon.
BTK is kind of like that, isn't he?
Yeah, I guess. But BTK, I'd be suspicious of BTK.
Wait, it's July the 4th. He'd be the guy. He'd invite you over the fence for.
Oh, do you want to come over for a sausage later?
Yeah. And he'd have the apron and the kiss the cook hat, and you know, and he'd have a pool party, and I mean, but John Wayne Gacy can kind of play that role, can he? He can kind of know how to use a knife.
Well, John Wayne Gacy was, I guess he was active in his community.
Yeah.
He was doing okay in the community. He had a good job. He ran his own business, in fact. And he was a motivated guy. It's just he liked to kill people. Which is, you know.
Dress up as a clown, and as you do on a Friday night.
Yeah, but he did that for charity events, didn't he?
Yeah.
I think he dressed as a clown for charity purposes. I don't know.
Around the neighborhood.
He did artwork, like later in life in prison. He did artwork of himself as a clown, which is kind of creepy. It's like, okay.
Yeah. I've seen some of his artwork. They're in Hollywood. The last night I was in Hollywood, before I moved to take a job in Yosemite National Park after high school. This is in the year 2000. If you know that bit. Anyway, they have the Museum of Death. And so you'd go in there and they'd have all these body bags and caskets, and they had the doom metal music and the Places of Death playing on the TV, and they had like the bunk beds. They had the bunk beds. They bought the bunk beds and the outfits, the Nikes, and the shrouds that the Hellbot people, the guy that cut his wiener off and
Oh,
went up
yeah.
to go see.
Bo Peep.
Yeah, so they had this museum dedicated to all these murders, and I was like, I don't know what the hell this was. $5 I had, so I went into this museum, and they had John Wayne Gacy's drawings up there. Weird.
Yeah, they're
Had
creepy.
like
I mean, John Wayne
but they had
Gacy, his last words were "kiss my ass," which is fine. I feel the same about you, John. But he protested his innocence, and it's like, dude, you had like 30 bodies in the crawl space. You know, how did they get there? How did they get there? You know, come on, man.
But he had a story for everything. Well, you know.
Well, there was
I
a
gave
setup.
peace.
The police set me up. It's like, come on, man. What for?
No, but he had a reason. Yeah, I mean, it was like, hey, I'm a businessman. I gave out keys to people in my, well, what's that smell? Well, the dog, it pees and poops in the house, and and then the radiator, and then just plains. It's central Illinois in the winter, Hang on, what about the bodies, bud? Well, about that. But he had an excuse for everything,
Indeed. But not a very good excuse.
Yeah. Ramirez scares me just because the whole edgy badass Satanism thing, I think. But you say he's a bit of a poser, but if you ran across him, I think he's a poser.
Oh, there's plenty of people fit into that category. He looks like a poser. 90% of the people out there, I think they look like posers. It doesn't mean I want to get in a fight with them. I'd just rather walk away, frankly. I like my teeth. But yeah, I think Ramirez is a bit of a poser, isn't he? I mean, it seems to me that he likes to present himself. It's like, and this guy is a particularly dangerous guy, is a guy called Kuklinski, I think. And he was a serial killer who used to do hits for the mafia. The Iceman, they called him.
Yeah, I've heard of the Iceman, yeah.
Yeah, and now I've seen him interviewed, and he liked to threaten people and be scary. He liked coming across as intimidating. Now, I guess he was intimidating. I mean, you wouldn't want to upset him.
Is Richard Ramirez intimidating?
I don't know. The whole I worship Satan and I'm the child of Satan and all that sort of jazz, it's just a bit LARP, isn't it? Isn't he LARPing?
The family was picked up. Just LARPing. Well, I mean, you're pretty fucking committed to Satan. Drawing fucking swastikas and,
Yeah, but how much commitment is that to say?
Children and
You draw a pentagram on your hand and you show it around at your court case. Hi, the press can see me. The press knows I'm a badass and all this sort of stuff. It's like, come on, man. I'm not saying he wasn't a dangerous guy, and I'm not saying that I want you to resurrect him. Careful, your mic's popping. Your mic's popping.
No, I'm laughing. But you wouldn't have them. Huh?
Didn't hear.
I said, you wouldn't have them. Yeah, but you wouldn't have. I mean, you dismiss him. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
You dismiss him as pathetic, but you wouldn't have him around for tea and scones, would you?
No, I wouldn't want to be anywhere near him. He smells like a goat anyway. I mean, what would you invite the guy? Hi, do you want to come around and stink out my lounge room? No, I'm all right, thanks.
But the fact that he got off on it, that he got satisfaction, sexual gratification, out of hurting innocent children. That's not LARPing, dude. That's not LARPing.
Maybe not.
I mean, he didn't just try to portray himself as evil. I mean, he just was. He was evil. And good riddance to bad rubbish. But
He died in prison.
he did.
Of,
He died in a prison. He died in a hospital.
Pancreatic cancer or something like that.
Hepatitis.
Hepatitis. I think you might be right. Yeah, which can often cause liver problems and things like that.
Well, my understanding is prison isn't exactly the most sanitary conditions.
I don't know. I don't know whether drugs were. I mean, sure, he did drugs when he was out and about, but I'm not sure if you can get drugs in prison like that. I don't know, but I'm sure if they did, they'd share needles and stuff like that. Be just
Yeah, I don't think they're very conscientious. I don't think people in prison are particularly conscientious, especially in maximum security and death row and stuff.
Was he on death row, or was it?
He was on death row, yeah.
Oh, okay. It's one of the ironies of American, you know, you say, we're going to kill you, and then 20 years later you're still alive. I mean, a lot of people die on death row of natural causes. Now, I'm not saying that stress wasn't a factor there, because, you know, perhaps it is. But a lot of people seem to die on death row.
I've never died on death row, so I wouldn't be able to tell you.
What?
No, but I don't know, just the idea of the Night Stalker, I mean, that's scary. I mean, you know, your breaking into little old grandma's houses and raping and murdering. I mean, just for no rhyme or reason, just because you wanted to, or just because that's how you got your kicks. But I mean, if you're going to go, you know, and I don't know if he's LARPing, because, like, if you're going to worship the devil, you might as well go all out. It sounded like he went all out with the devil worship. I mean, you know, when you think LARPing, you think of the angsty teenagers and the playing with the Ouija board or whatever when you're a teenager. Oh, does she like me? Does Bobby and Homer like me? I mean, that's harmless, but you know, murdering and dismembering people. I mean, to our two viewer thing, that one should go out and do these things. But if you're going to worship the devil, you might as well go all the way. I mean, if you're going to go to that, might as well just go all the way with the devil. I mean, really.
Well, I mean, it depends, you know. You know, I don't think you get to reign in hell, though.
Oh.
I'd find that very unlikely. You know, the idea that, well, you're not going to be the one suffering in hell, you're going to be giving suffering to others. It's like, no, I don't think the devil keeps his friends like that. Anyway, time to wind it up. Thank you to our 2 listeners or viewers so far. Feel free to follow the room. We don't know what we're doing with this at this stage, but we'll just routinely get on here and speak stuff, and yeah, it's a hobby. All right, I'll play the outro and let's go.